Hello, my name's David Wolf. I'm the fire chief here in Estes. I joined the fire service about 20 years ago, and I've been here in Colorado for the last 4 years.
Hi, I'm Kevin Sullivan, the new fire marshal with Estes Valley Fire Protection District. I've been in the fire service for about 12 years and had the opportunity to work in both Oregon and Arizona as it pertains to wildfire issues.
And today we're here to talk to you about what it means to live in the wildland urban interface and some of the things that you can do to keep your property safe and any visitors or guests that might come to our beautiful valley safe as well. Today, the main things that we want to have you understand and help educate on is what it means to live in the wildland urban interface. If you're fortunate to live or visit the Estes Valley, then you're within that WUI and you have an elevated risk of wildfire. And as property owners or someone who lives here, there's things that we need you to take responsibility for on your own property, ideally following FireWise principles, which we're going to talk about today. And for visitors and guests, we want them to be educated about their risk and how they can be safe with fire. And since they're not someone who necessarily lives here or is used to that risk year round, it's our responsibility to help make sure that they're aware of this important information. So what is the wildland urban interface? It's anywhere that we have structures such as homes or businesses abut wildland fuels. And there's three types of examples of wildland urban interface that you may encounter: the classic, mixed, and occluded. The classic interface here shown, we've got Moraine Avenue right here in town, Riverside Drive, the Big Thompson River. This is where we have structures directly adjacent to wildland fuels. And there's a clear line of demarcation between the wildland and the interface to the development. Other places we might have a mixed interface where you've got structures scattered throughout a wildland area. Little Valley is an example of that here in the Estes Valley, where we have homes spread out throughout trees. And of course, this is a very desirable type of place to be, where we're around trees, and that's why we all moved to Colorado, so that we can be in nature. But of course, this adds some additional risks and hazards that we need to be aware of so that we can mitigate them. The third example is one that we don't typically see here in the Estes Valley, but it's an occluded interface where you have structures surrounding an island of wildland fuels. If you're familiar with Estes Park, you might be thinking about areas like Bond Park or things like that, but this isn't our primary risk. It's mostly the classic interface and mixed interface within the Estes Valley. So what's the risk and what are we talking about? We've been seeing wildland fires increasing in frequency through time. And over the last 20 years, we've seen 84% of the fires being human caused. There's a number of sources of human cause, but of course this is including things like infrastructure, like power lines, people being irresponsible when it comes to their fires, campfires, or prescribed burning. And then a very small percentage of the fires actually coming from natural causes such as lightning strikes. We're going to talk today about the things that we can do to protect ourselves from all of these types of fires, but of course want to encourage people to be safe with fire as well, so we can reduce that risk and minimize the chance that we start one of these fires. We've seen more fires in subdivisions and places with increased population. We have examples like the Camp Fire in Paradise, California in 2018. This was an incredibly high risk to both public and firefighter safety. And we've seen here in Colorado that our traditional fire season has greatly expanded to be the full year. We're not just seeing fires in the summer, but we see them more and more in the shoulder seasons, as late as December, as early as February, into the year, as we're talking about a fire season going year round. The other example I have here on the screen is from the Chimney Tops 2 fire, which started in Great Smoky Mountain National Park and burned out into the communities of Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge, impacting a number of homes right at a gateway community, much like our own. And we know that this risk exists here in the Estes Valley. We're not just talking about an abstract concept that other people have to deal with. We're talking about our homes, our possessions, our neighbors, all of these people that we live with. And here's some examples from the Woodland Heights fire that we had here in 2012 that started and burned 22 homes along High Drive. We know this is a risk here, and this is why we want to make sure that we're understanding how we can be a little bit safer and protect our community.
Thanks, Chief. I think you did a nice job at identifying what the problem is. I'd like to take the opportunity to talk about solutions now. So what can we do? Well, the responsibility is a shared responsibility, and that's a really critical component. we need to understand that we as the fire service have a responsibility, but also you as property owners, whether they're the homes that you live in directly or the homes that you own and other people rent those out or are guests, we have responsibilities in those areas as well. So we need to make sure that homeowners are practicing FireWise principles. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in detail here shortly. We need to have an understanding that it's not a matter of if wildfire will occur, but when wildfire occurs. And we need to be prepared for that year round. So we need to think about, what is the ideal time to maintain our properties? How are we prepared in terms of signing up for available emergency alert notification systems, not only for those of us here that live here in Colorado, but for those folks that are guests in this beautiful area as well. So we have a responsibility to educate those guests. We're going to tell you how you can do that here shortly. So property owners, let's talk about what are some things that you can do. So I think the most important thing is acknowledging that you have a responsibility to do something. We consider really the area around your house. We refer to that as defensible space. And there's some critical things that you can do to ensure that that defensible space protects you during a wildfire or reduces the impact of wildfire if it happens near your home. So we talk about fuel reduction, right? So obviously, chief concern in a wildfire is what is burning around your house. So if we can reduce what is burning around your house in terms of fuels, that's a very good thing. We have resources available as well. So if there's something that you have questions on or something doesn't make sense or you don't know how to approach it, we're here to help you in that and to help guide you. We're going to talk about that a little bit more as well. So this is a diagram put out by FireWise. I think this is a really critical diagram because it tells you exactly what the concerns are with respect to the areas around your house. So if we look at it in terms of zones, the first 5 feet away from your house, and then an intermediate zone, the first 30 feet away from your house, and then the extended zone, 100 feet away from your house. So what are some things that you can do? So let's start at the 5-foot level. Obviously, combustible mulches, we don't want those right up against the house because those really are a good place for firebrands to take hold and ignite during a wildfire incident. So we want to make sure that you don't have any combustible mulch directly up against your house within that 5-foot zone. We want to make sure that you're trimming any branches that are overhanging your roof or portions of your house from adjacent trees. We want to make sure that you're removing needles and debris from gutters and your roofs and from roof valleys. And we also want to make sure that we're removing that same material from underneath decks and anything that's combustible right up against your house. Another consideration that people don't think about is patio furniture. If a wildfire were to occur, patio furniture, the foams are a really good place for fires or firebrands to sit and ignite. So we want to make sure that you're removing patio furniture or thinking about that if you have time to do that before you evacuate. And other considerations, native plantings. We want to make sure that any planting that's really right up against your house or transitioning into that intermediate zone is really something that's native and fire resistant. Let's talk about fuel continuity as we move out from away from the house into the greater landscape. We want to do things like trim ladder fuels. And what I mean by ladder fuels is the transition between grass, which we consider light flashy fuels, to the more dense fuels like trees, shrubbery, those sorts of things. So ideally, we want to make sure that anything between those light flashy fuels like grass and adjacent trees, we have a fuel break. So if you have branches that are low or extending down, we want to make sure that those are trimmed and removed so we don't give fire the opportunity to burn up and into those other fuels. Also, we want to think about things like wood storage, propane tank storage. We don't want that right up against the house. That might be a great opportunity to put that out maybe in a shed or away from that house, in that more extended zone like we talked about.
And Chief Sullivan, one of the concerns I've heard from homeowners is, well, my property line doesn't extend 100 feet from my house. And one of the things that we talk about is how that just highlights what a collaborative effort that is required to make our property safer. Is that it's not just up to me to protect my property, but it might be the FireWise work that I do that help keeps my neighbor's home safe. And so here, as we live in this valley together, we can have these conversations with our neighbors to make sure that not only is our property safe, but those around us are taking these same precautions to help work together.
That's a great point, right? We're looking at this on a large scale. We're in this together, right? So it's a shared responsibility. And those are idealized models as well. So 5 feet, 30 feet, 100 feet. Not every property has those calculations. Not every property is possible to actually create that defensible space as it's demonstrated in that diagram. So we're going to talk about what we can do if you have unique situations or questions that relate directly to your property. So FireWise resources, we're here for you. We're in this together. So if you have questions, we have some information on our website that's posted here as you're looking at it in the presentation. But ultimately, don't hesitate to call and talk to us directly and have a human interaction. We're here to support you. Fire restrictions. So we talked about responsibilities of homeowners and then of other property owners who may have guest or residence or rental property. But what's our responsibility? What are we doing? So one of the critical things that we want to ensure is that we're enforcing fire regulations appropriately, so that if we're encouraging people to reduce their vegetation and ultimately people are burning that vegetation to get rid of it, we want to ensure that we have the mechanisms in place to do that safely. One of the ways we do that is to impose fire restrictions, right? So there's some great information on our website. We're not going to go into this in detail, other than knowing that there's things that you really have to follow and that are appropriate before you burn, and so that you're burning safely, so that a well-intended fire doesn't become a disaster. All right, burn permits. Part of that regulation is burn permits, right? So we want to ensure that people are burning in a safe fashion. So the point of this slide is to demonstrate that there's a process, and it's critical that you go through that process anytime that you do want to burn. Permits are available through Larimer County. All of that information is available on our website. And again, if you have questions about how to navigate that, we're here to help you. Give us a call. Here's a great video. We don't have time in this presentation to watch the entire video, but the point of this video is to demonstrate that there's a lot of great resources out there in terms of a collaboration between other agencies and local fire agencies to help prepare you and educate you for how best to approach the wildfire challenge. I encourage you to take a look at this video, and if you have additional questions, don't hesitate to reach out. All right, we talked about if you have a unique property, Chief, and you've reviewed this presentation, you've looked at the diagrams, maybe you've looked at our website and had questions about some of the information that's available. Maybe you looked at other websites like the Ready, Set, Go information, or FireWise, or One Less Spark, One Less Wildfire campaigns, and you said, I really am uncertain on where to go, what the next step is, or how that applies to me on my property. So we talked about how we're here to help you, and this is one of the ways that the Estes Valley Fire Protection District can come out and actually help you navigate those challenges. So we have a program where we can send somebody out to actually meet with you on site and actually do an evaluation and actually have that conversation about how you create defensible space, how you harden your home, whether it's new construction or existing construction, and the steps that you can take to actually be prepared and to prevent wildfire. We'll also talk about things like, okay, here's the built environment and here's your property. What else can you do, right? How are you prepared if a wildfire happens and the hour has passed to harden your home or create that defensible space, and you're put in a position where you have to make the call to evacuate. We want to make sure that you have those tools as well.
And so this resource that's on our website can really help homeowners because it's a self-assessment guide you can download and go through yourself, as well as Chief mentioned, have somebody trained from our agency come out and walk through this with you. It is entirely free for us to come out and do this assessment with you. It will be unique to your property. And there's no obligation for you to follow up on this. There's not an enforcement piece to this. We want to get this information into your hands so that you can make good decisions with it. That's the purpose. So we hope you'll reach out to us and take advantage of this assessment guide. And then the other opportunity that we have is to make sure that our members, everybody that lives within our valley, is signed up to make sure they're alerted if there is some sort of disaster. We have an emergency alert system in northern Colorado called NOCO Alerts. You can go to the website nocoalert.org to get signed up. You put in information such as your home address and your work address to make sure that you get notified whether you're at work or home. And these are available not just for Estes Park, but for all of northern Colorado and specifically Larimer County where this is focused. If you were previously signed up for some of the other alert models, this may carry over into this. They've got a lot of information on the website, and we encourage everybody who spends any significant amount of time here in Estes to sign up through NOCO Alerts. And of course, we're not just limited to those who live here full-time. We want to make sure that people who are visiting can get notified if there is an emergency. And that's why they developed a very special option for people to sign up into, that is to get emergency alerts for a short period. So they can very quickly text EP alerts to that number on the screen, 888-777, and that will opt them in for just a 2-week window, and then it will clear them out. So that way, anybody who comes to visit you, maybe you've got family coming into town, you have friends coming into town that are going to spend time up in the beautiful Estes Valley, having them opt into this will ensure they get notified if there is an emergency where they are, and then we'll make sure they don't get bothered by this information when they're back and then they return back home. So whether you live here full time or you have people coming to visit, please make sure that people are getting signed up for these options and being notified. And as we mentioned, we want to make sure that all of our guests are aware of these fire dangers and things, which you may be very aware of if you grew up here in Colorado or you live here in Colorado, but other parts of the country don't have some of the same challenges. So some of the ways that you can manage that is, if you have guests using your properties, make sure your property is following FireWise principles, and see if there are ways that you can reduce the risk or opportunities for risk by looking at things of, how can I make this safer? Because I expect guests might want to have a fire. So rather than just having an open pit or an open area in my backyard, maybe I can build a fire ring as simple as stacking up bricks or something manufactured, and making that safer so that if people are going to use it, they can use it more safely. And as I mentioned, not everyone understands the same risks about wildfire that people who live here in the valley might understand. So how can we make sure to communicate the need to protect our beautiful valley to others that are coming in? Talk to your guests, talk to your visitors about safety with campfires. Talk to them about safety with smoking materials and where those need to be discarded to be safe, and getting them signed up for emergency alerts, utilizing that very simple to sign up, short-term option for them while they're here in town. So the main things that we wanted to touch on today, and hopefully you took away, is that if you're fortunate to live here, you are in the wildland urban interface. And that means that we've got an elevated risk of wildfire. So as property owners or people who live in the valley, we need to take responsibility for our properties and follow FireWise principles to make our properties as safe as possible. If you need more information on how to do that, we've got a lot of resources on our website. We have the self-assessment program. We hope you'll call us, and we'd be happy to come out and talk to you more about your specific property and how you might accomplish those goals for your property. And if you have visitors or guests coming to visit, we hope that you'll work with us to help educate them about their risk and how they can help be safe with fire, both in the use of fire and to protect our properties from fire, so that we don't have any unfortunate human starts here in the valley. We hope this was useful for you, and we hope you'll reach out if you've got any further questions. We appreciate you taking the time to watch this presentation. Thank you.